Okay, so in your book, you're supposed to do page 362 and 363. And for 1 through 6, you're just going to find the area and perimeter. That's all you're going to do for that section, just so you can have some practice. And if you're not really sure or remember how to do it, just go back to the video from yesterday and watch that. But for 9 through 12, you see how it's a little bit tricky and a little bit different. But for this one, you're going to be working with complex figures. And complex figures are a little bit more tricky because there's a little bit more steps you have to do. So let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to do 9 and 10, and then I want you to do 11 and 12, okay? So first, let's start out with our perimeter for this one. So when working with complex shapes, you see how there's a lot of different sides and lengths and everything. It looks really confusing. But for the perimeter, all you're going to do is you're just going to add up each of the lengths that you see, each of the sides. And so we're going to add all of these together. So 5 plus 2, oh, I hope I have room. 2, 2, 2, and then 3, and then 4. Okay, so it's simply all you're going to do. You're just going to add all of these together. So 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 plus 2 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 plus 3 is 14. And then 14 plus 4 is 18. So your perimeter is just 18 yards. Okay, so simply all you're going to do for that one. Okay. So let's go ahead and do the perimeter for this one because it's the same exact way, and for the rest of the problems you're going to do, you're simply just going to add up all the sides together. So all the sides you see. So let's start with 4 and go all the way around. 4 plus 14 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2 and plus 10. Squeeze that in there. The same thing, we're just going to add them all together. So 4 plus 14 is 18. 18 plus 6 is, oh, I have to think. 18 plus 6 is 24. 24? You know what, just to be sure, I'm going to write this one out. Because if we have one of them off, the whole thing's going to be off. Plus 6 is 24. Yeah, okay, so it's 24. 24 plus 4 is 28. 28 plus 2 is 30, and then 30 plus 10 is 40. So that's going to be your perimeter. For number 10 is 40, what are they using, meters? So 40 meters. So that's all you're going to do for your perimeter and complex figures. You're just going to simply add all of the sides together, okay? So, let's see. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at our area for these types of shapes, okay? The area is where you're going to have to do a couple more steps to figure that out. And so you can see that I already have an imaginary line right here with the little dots. So what you're going to do when you're going to find your area is you're going to separate the shape into where you see a good square or rectangle. So it's not all like funky looking and it looks kind of crazy like this. So I've made my line go down right here because I'm going to have a perfect square and a perfect rectangle. So once I have them separated, I'm going to go ahead and take the shapes like I was picking them up and moving them over here. So it's easier to work with, okay? So I'm going to move this square that I separated right here. And then I'm going to move this rectangle over here. Okay, so I just separated this shape into 2. Now, let's go ahead and label my sides for this. Okay, so for my square, I already knew before I moved it over here that this side was going to be 2 yards. And then what do we automatically know about squares? We know that all the sides are going to be the same. So that lets me know, and up here at the top and up here, it's 2 yards. So that lets me know all the sides are going to be the same. So I can go ahead and label my 2 yards all the way around because we know squares have equal sides. Okay, so now let's move on to our rectangle, okay? And so if I look up here, let's figure out the things we already know first. So before I moved it, I could already tell my width, which was up here, it's labeled 3 yards. So I'm going to do the same thing because I just moved it over a little bit. And then I know my length is right here. It already gave it to me and it's 4 yards. Okay. So I'm going to do my, hold on. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so, yeah, so we know that with area, you're going to have your length and your width. And so, let's go ahead and do our rectangle first. So we know the length is 4. So 4 times, and our width is 3. So that's going to be 12. Okay, and then we know that when we work with a square, all the sides are equal. And so we're going to do the same thing, length times width. And it's just 2 times 2. And we know 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so we're still not done yet. We have our 2 areas for each of our shapes, but the shape is still combined together in your book. So what you're just going to do, you're just going to add up the 2 areas that you had together. So 12 plus 4 is 16. So that's what your area is going to be for number 9. I've written a lot over here, but that's what your area. Don't forget your square, and then yards. It's kind of all bunched up, but that's your area. So that's what you're just going to do for this one, and we're going to practice with this one too, just in case you're still confused. Okay. Alright, so I see my shape. We've already found my perimeter for this one, and so let's work onto our area. So first step I need to do is look at where I can separate this shape to where it's more easier to work with. And I see where I could separate it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my imaginary line up. So I have 2 perfect rectangles. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to act like I'm bringing this one over. I'm going to erase this because just so we have some more room. Okay, so I have this rectangle that I brought over right here, and then I'm going to bring this rectangle over too. Alright, so these are my 2 rectangles that I'm working with. Remember, this is the same shape, I just separated it and brought it over here. Okay, so let's work with what we know already. And so, if we're looking at this rectangle, which is right here, we already know from the measurements that they give us that our length is going to be 4 meters. So I can go ahead and bring this one over right here as well. So I already know that. And then if I look down here, since I separated where it stops, I already know my width is 10 meters. So I can go ahead and write that in as well too. So I already have my length and my width for this square, so now I need to move on to this square. Okay, so let's look at what we already know. They give us our measurements for our length right here. So the length is 6 meters. Okay, and then our width is right here, because remember this rectangle goes right here. So our width is 4. Okay, so we need to use our formula for area and find out the area for these 2 figures by themselves first. So we know we're going to do 10 times 4, which is 40. Okay, so that's the area for this this rectangle. And then for this one, we do the same thing. 6 times 4 is 24. So we have the area for this rectangle. Okay, so now we have one more step we need to do before we found our area for the whole shape. And that is to add these 2 areas together. And so 40, hold on, let's just go ahead and write it. Okay, so this is going to be the area for this whole shape. It's 24, 64. Okay, so the area for this whole shape now, because I've added these 2 together, is going to be 64. Let's erase this. 64 square meters. So that is how you found your area for complex figures. I know it's a little tricky and it has a lot more steps to it, but remember, first step, separate your complex figure to where you can find 2 or 3 good squares and rectangles to work with. Remember, act like you're picking those shapes up and moving them over, and plug in the links that they already give you first. And then remember, find your area for each shape. And then once you find your area for each shape that you're working with, add those together, because that's going to be your area for this whole figure. Okay? So that's how you do that. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay?